Center, we really, just like our University of Toronto Center for the Study of Pain, we really kind of support interprofessional education and care across the system. And so that's my role, is looking at the integration of that and how better to do that when we're thinking about such an important thing related to teams that work in pain management support. I'm also a physiotherapist. So just we're going to be talking a little bit about different roles and professions. And so I'm glad to also have that clinical role that I still practice in as well. And I'll pass it over to Zoraida.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dean. Welcome, everyone. My name is Zoraida Biku. I'm an associate professor teaching stream at the Faculty of Nursing here at U of T. I'm the IPE lead for the faculty, so that's my involvement currently as part of this working group for this facilitator session that you're attending. I, very similar to Dean, have been part of the Interprofessional Pain Week since it started quite a few years ago as a facilitator, so definitely have been in your shoes at one time. So thank you again for your time, and hoping that this workshop will be helpful and address some of the questions that you may have. And Donnie, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Donnie Betancourt. I'm an education coordinator at CASH, at the Center for Advancing Collaborative Healthcare and Education. I help with our foundational learning activities and special projects, and I'm an elementary teacher by background. I'm not sure, Shelley, if you want to introduce yourself, but go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's probably a good idea. I'm Shelley O'Brien. I'm the education coordinator at the University of Toronto Center for the Study of Pain. So I'm the person that you've been getting the emails from and have been answering some of your questions. I will be on site on the Tuesday at OISE, and also available on the days of. If you have any questions or concerns, I'll make sure to share my number so you can reach me. Nice to meet everyone.
Sorry, I was on mute, which we still do. So thank you, everyone. And so what we're going to start first is just to do a land acknowledgement, as we always do. And I really, pleased and privileged to be able to acknowledge the land on which University of Toronto operates. And for thousands of years, it's been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. And I say I'm really just pleased and grateful with the opportunity. I immigrated here when I was a very young age from and have really been blessed to see all aspects of the land, but also the people. But we also have I'm learning a lot, and I'm in a really learning mode about how the history and our challenges and our learnings from the past, and how we make this into the present and future. So with that, in the idea of always constantly being a learner here, I think we have that opportunity today as well, as we think about our agenda today. And so really want to just highlight the fact that we are going to cover aspects of how you might facilitate interprofessional groups. And we're going to talk more, but you can see that this is not going to cover everything that you read in your manual. The manual is really well done and gives a good sense of what we consider the orientation to the Pain Week. But what we want to do is help you with the interprofessional education side of things, knowing that the groups are diverse, knowing that you will be challenged in a virtual world to try to get the engagement. And there's nuances to what you're doing on Tuesday versus Wednesday, where you have really rich pain cases, but we will have really engaged behavior, but we also have challenging behavior. And then we're just going to have a chance to debrief as well, and welcome any questions at that point. And so our learning objectives is around the facilitation, engagement, and practice. And so it hopefully will get you started, but we do really, again, we'll point you back to the guide to really get prepared for the actual task of the activities. What we're going to talk more is around the process. And so a few things to highlight that I think are really important to set the stage with your groups. So we do work in a complex health system. And so I think these are some key issues that we just know that you have coming into this from your own positionality, from your own experiences. You are working in an increasingly complex system. We're short-staffed, we're burnt out. Pain management is complex, especially with the conditions we work with, and we're dealing with inequities of resources. So I think these are things that, I think your experiences are going to be really valuable to bring. I think the challenge sometimes is just making sure that we really highlight the idea of the team-based care. And so we are really strong pain clinicians, and I say we as in all of us here have really steeped in pain management and in pain practice, but often it's solo practice. And so we sometimes work in parallel as opposed to working in integration. So the idea of team-based care is really important, that we have seen from governments, from best practice, from evidence. And what we really want to highlight is that the more we can do team-based learning, and it's going to enhance team-based care. And so when we think, when is a team needed, we know that there are times where multi-professional practice really works, and we work in parallel, or we work in silos. And I've been there. I've worked in a private clinic and in the community. And there are times where some of my clients were actually had very little contact with the family physician who was at the order, with the community pharmacist, with some diagnostics. And our clients who are fairly straightforward tend to do okay. But the reality is that straightforward client is not is the exception. We often have complex clients, and we have increasing complexity too when we think about not just the physical realm, which I work a lot in, but the psychosocial realm, thinking about holistic care. So I think that what we're seeing is more on the right, where we see complexity, where we have to work in integrated practice, where we have to make connections and contacts in many different ways. Sometimes it's like really formalized in team meetings. Sometimes it's sharing of notes. And so I think we want to capture that in the pain curriculum, about that opportunity to really recognize that that there are lots of different roles, there's lots of different settings, but in the end, we are seeing with more complexity, we need interprofessional practice. And so I think that leads us to interprofessional education. And what we are doing now is having the students learn about, from, and with each other. So they can learn about and from each other by just reading up, by listening to lectures, by having guest speakers. The with each other is really important, where they actually get to socialize. They have to problem solve. They have to think together. They have to decision make together. These are the things that we know we do on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what you can bring. As I mentioned, you bring a lot of experiences. It's just the nuances of knowing that you do this from a day-to-day, and it just really helps the credibility as a facilitator to our students, knowing the fact that, again, we're going to teach you, we're going to teach you, you likely know this, but we're going to really build on that to think about how can we facilitate and enable that learning about, from, and with, because it can become all about us as a teacher sometimes. So we need to be cautious about that. So why do IPE? We know that it does help the ability to understand each other, come out with better attitudes and perceptions. The reality is the workforce is really challenging these days. So, and we have a generation that has been exposed to all of this as they were learning. So we want to create that idea of agility and flexibility and adaptability. We want to be able to think about care, not just in siloed individual ways, but in holistic. We need to think about how our specialties work together. And we're really stressed, and we're really challenged to sustain ourselves in this field. So I think the idea of doing good teamwork has actually helped the sustainability. And so when we think about what makes an education session interprofessional, is the opportunity to really facilitate learning, be explicit when we see interprofessional opportunities. And the idea of shared goal and planning is actually really built into this activity. And so we want to facilitate the learning by using things like interactivity, active listening.
Then we can go. I can take the meeting on the. I just.
And communication, experience sharing, and respect. So you'll see this is all really built into your work, but it's really important we remind ourselves of this because there are times where we get too focused on the task and not in the process. So it is a balancing act, as I mentioned. And it's interesting, I mentioned earlier that if you just looked at the orientation guide, your tasks are very straightforward. This is a very task-driven activity. What is not there actually is there, because I think they're really nicely have built into that. But what we really want to emphasize here is the process. And so what you might get really focused on is trying to get through the tasks and keeping on time, which is important, and being organized, but losing sight of the opportunity in the process. So we really want to encourage you to think beyond simply what the students have to do together, but how they can actually really learn and get to know each other as you know, not just in our roles, but as people and as learners together. So that is a bit of the balancing act we do. And so we need to create an environment to do that, to create a psychologically safe space where we have students really have a chance to kind of create an embrace together, take risks together, speak up when they're not so sure, ask questions. And so that again is your role as a facilitator, is not to simply be a teacher, but be a facilitator. And finally, I think one other piece that I want to mention before I hand off is this idea that there is power and privilege. We started off with a land acknowledgement, and I really want to highlight that the students are doing a lot of learning around this, but I really think we want to integrate this in all of our work. The cases are very good at that as well, to consider the fact that there are many different aspects of our relationships, whether it be with our clients, our families, our communities, with each other, and they are influenced by power and privilege, and whether it be things like gender power, ethnicity, economic status, as I mentioned, that sometimes some people have access to more things, some people don't. Even, you know, when we think about the students you'll have students who are more senior and more junior. You'll have students which are in a role that has more power and privilege than others. So we really need to be mindful of all that as we try to create that psychologically safe, that collaborative environment. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Zoraida to talk a little bit more around some of the activities that we'll be doing.
Thank you, Dean. So as Dean was saying, a lot of this workshop will focus on process during your time with the students. I just wanted to switch hats for a moment to focus on the task and what is covered during Pain Week. So you should have already received a facilitator manual for both Tuesday and Wednesday, as shown here. And I really emphasize the importance of reviewing the material prior to your session on Tuesday or Wednesday, or perhaps both if you signed up for both. Manual is chock full of information. It has the agenda, it has timelines, it has activities with corresponding resources and appendices. So I just want to briefly show you, if you haven't had a chance to look at the manual, what I'm referring to in regards to appendices. So this is the manual for Tuesday. They look very similar or laid out, same format. So when you review it, there are going to be these appendices, as you notice here with the Google Drive. So just click on it and you'll have a list of different appendices depending on where you're at during your session. And throughout the manual, it'll actually refer you to the specific appendices that perhaps you should look at for further resources. So I did really want to highlight that for you because for those who might be a returning facilitator, these manuals are new in the sense of format. So I did want to share that. So thank you. Thank you, Donnie. In regards to Pain Week and the objectives, Um, okay. Specifically to the pain curriculum. Now, again, a lot of overall tasks and objectives describing the biopsychosocial basis of pain, reviewing and applying some clinical assessment and measurement tools to evaluate treatment, describe common misconceptions of pain, the interprofessional management and strategies, as well as, and this is where your facilitator role is going to really take place, is really helping the students as interprofessional team to create a comprehensive pain assessment and management plan, as well as, of course, while making this plan, really look into the ethical, cultural, social aspects of the management, as well as most importantly, is that how you take the role of the person in pain as a member of the team, that the patient and or client is always an active member of the team. Now, in regards to group norms or creating group norms, so setting norms is at the beginning of your session is really quite important, right? Team norms, what are they? Are a set of rules that the team establishes, and that's key. That the team establishes to shape that interaction between members. Once developed, team norms are used to guide the team's behavior. Team norms are used to assess how they work as teams and how they interact. And quite honestly, for me, the reason why establishing these norms, and because the guidelines or the rules were established by the team, is that if conflict, etc., happens during your time with them, I always refer back to the team norms, just again, grounding them back to the purpose of why we're together, right? So establishing that is really important. And I think we are going to actually have our first activity of the morning in regards to really talking about group norms. So we're going to play a video, a short one. And as you're watching this video, I'd like you to reflect on what's happening in this scenario, who's involved, and how would you describe the facilitation? And how else might you intervene as an effective facilitator? So let's play the video.
Okay, well, thank you for introducing yourselves. Now we need to discuss how we're going to organize ourselves so that we can function effectively as a group. And there's a few ways we can do this, but I know we're short on time. So we need to assign a timekeeper, a recorder, and a treat bringer, and then we need to discuss our group norms. Well, I'll be the leader. There. And who would like to be the timekeeper? Claire?
Oh.
And the recorder? Heather? And treat bringer? Annabelle? Okay. All right, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. So, now we're going to go on to the group norms. Now, the last group that I was with, we all agreed to treat each other with respect. Only one person talks at a time. All be on time, obviously, and ask questions at any time. So just put up your hands if you agree with those. Okay, great. Well, now that that's done, we can discuss this week's case. Mrs. Singh. What's up? Why are you guys so quiet?
Well, we thought that you'd tell us who should start.
No, this is a self-directed group. So you as group members are supposed to take the lead.
So anyone, what are your initial thoughts of that video? And feel free to unmute. Feel free to put it on the chat, like what was happening in this scenario and how, particularly because it's facilitation, how to describe it. Crystal, I see your hand up.
Sorry, I'm having issues with my camera, but I just thought the leader wasn't very clear and he was sort of domineering. He didn't really give anyone a chance to sort of interject or give input. He just said, no, okay, moving on. So that's probably not best facilitation.
Thank you. Other thoughts?
I think he was giving questions and answers on his own and assuming everyone is saying yes, not waiting to see whether people are agreeing even. Like he was even looking at he wasn't even looking at their faces. They didn't seem to be quite happy with what was happening. And he kind of also decided who's going to be doing what. It wasn't like they were forming the norms, but it wasn't, he was forming the norms for them. He wasn't a group, was not forming the norms.
Absolutely. And I'm just reading the chat and Kathleen was like, it was a one-man show. And absolutely, that's a great way to describe it. So I guess if you were in this scenario, how might you have intervened as an effective facilitator? What are your thoughts with that? Like how, if this was your group, how would you have done it?
I think I would just say that let's hear from other group members when he was starting off. So just say that let's hear from some other group members what they feel, just so that it doesn't, it's not just one person. So something like that.
Excellent, excellent. And I think the reason why we like this video, and it's a classic video, as you noted on the chat, that someone has seen the same video quite a few years ago. It's because it's so classic in regards to a facilitator or a lead person really focusing on tasks versus process. Like they knew they had to get something done. They knew they had to create these group norms. Let me just do it and continue the conversation or continue on, right? So this is just an example of that, how one could really be focused on task and actually lose the entire process of the whole thing, right? So thank you. Thank you for the participation with that. So
Zarada, can I just quickly, I'll just add one other thing. I think when you slip into tasks, it's not intentional sometimes. I think the time pressures often push us. And so there are 10 minutes for the norms piece. I've had groups just jump right in and they come up with great norms. And I've had groups struggle a bit and they come up with really superficial norms. And I think the groups have experienced this through all of their IPEs. So they should actually either like be able to bring up some or be able to generate some fairly quickly. I don't want to also lose the opportunity for you to not add on to that, because you might not hear something about, really supporting the discussion and stepping back. You might have something that you want to add to that, but I would just hold it back a little bit and let the group generate. I think that's the intent of that video. And we are really explicit about, like in all of our description, that people need to be engaged. And we've noted that the engagement is also being visible and audio. So that means unmuting, that means turning your web camera on. It's very actually direct. Like I think we softened it when we first came on, but now we're really quite strong in terms of the fact that it will be better for the students and the facilitator if you are active. And it is really the rare exception where you would have not be able to not blur your background and not be visible. So I just want to let you know that I think you have that support, but it might be something that you might want to capture in group norms, or at least just talking about the fact that participation is really mandatory here, but just giving the students an opportunity to capture that in the norm so you can come back to that in the future. Zoraida, does that make sense to you? I just want to capture
Yes,
that.
absolutely. And I think also highlighting the point that sometimes things such as the video happens not only because of time constraints, but sometimes as lead, and maybe for those who are new facilitators this year, it's about nervousness too. Being nervous and just wanting to kind of keep the conversation going, and maybe not being so comfortable with silence. And sometimes silence happens so that the process happens. So it's also taking into that account as well. And lastly, as Dean said, many of these students have done other IPE sessions and have done group norm exercises before. So it should be something that they're mostly familiar with in a sense of ease of conversation and building your team. So thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Dean, for your comments as well. And it brings me into facilitation and what it is. And so facilitation is the process of guiding the groups and individuals to find solutions and reach consensus, which is very different than teaching. And that's why facilitation, or at least one can argue, facilitation is actually more difficult than teaching, because teaching, you control it, right? It's didactic or what have you. You have objectives, you have a learning plan, and you're going to do it. Facilitation, you don't control the narrative, right? Your group does. So sometimes you really have to be comfortable with not having overall control of what can happen, right? And be flexible with that, and being able to understand the reason why that's important is because you really do want to empower the students and the group to learn themselves and to establish solutions collaboratively, right? So facilitation is not easy. All right. And I really do feel it is more difficult to be a facilitator than a teacher. But in regards to interprofessional facilitation and how that might be different than perhaps facilitation that you've done already, thank you, is that many of us already facilitated small groups, I'm sure. You can use that experience to build on and strengthen the facilitation within this session. But what's really different in the sense of IP facilitation is that you want to again ensure introductions are done. You do icebreakers. The creation of group norms is important, again, for you to be able to go back to should conflict, etc., happen during your discussions. You want to especially establish a learning climate and role model collaboration. I think it's really important as a facilitator to be that role model in regards to because you bring experience into these sessions, right? You're a practitioner, you're out in the practice setting. You already have credibility with the students because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear about real life stories as different professions, right? But you also want to be authentic. You want to be professional. You want to be genuine. So you want to role model that in regards to um, being able to say, being able to say, oh, I don't know about the treatment for that case, but maybe there are resources that we can find, right? This notion for some students feeling that they need to know everything or must know everything or expected to know everything is just not true in practice. And that's something that I think you can role model that collaboration, saying that, you know what, I don't know, but I could go to the pharmacist, I could go to a physical therapist, let's ask, right? You definitely do want to establish that learning climate, again, being accepting of limitations, understanding that no, we're not expecting you to know it all, and be comfortable with that and promoting that participation and that discussion. You also want to listen, active listening. You want to observe and clarify any group process. Absolutely, you want to question sometimes, and I'm guilty for it as well, using that medical jargon or professional jargon to try to limit that, or even catch yourself doing it and then stating that to your group. You do want to engage in different opinions and work through that conflict, summarize and receive feedback, but particularly you really want them to reflect. A lot of the process is about reflection, and it is about understanding the group process and understanding communication and understanding how that actually affects overall patient care. So you do want them to build that confidence in a sense of their own profession, but also build their confidence in being part of the team. And in regards to co-facilitation, so sometimes another helpful strategy is actually to facilitate as a co-facilitator. And perhaps depending on how scheduling is, some of you may actually have co-facilitators with you during either Tuesday or Wednesday. If that is so, if you are a co-facilitator, it would be great if you could meet beforehand to meet one another and kind of discuss perhaps roles and how you're going to be able to co-facilitate the group. Most of the time, co-facilitators are from different professions. You want, again, really mimic and role model that collaborative learning environment and that opportunity to reflect as well. When you do meet prior, you want to share those responsibilities and be sure of different roles that you may be taking, and together observe and intervene and observe and relate to the task and processes happening with your group. So co-facilitation is great, and I really do recommend it, especially if it's your first time facilitating. But key to successful co-facilitation is actually meeting prior. Again, just to make sure that you understand your shared responsibilities. Now, Dean mentioned about creating a safe and safe environment. Definitely, you want to create a learning environment. Now, in person, which would be the Tuesday session, you want to pay attention to your body language, set the environment so everyone's able to participate. Maybe it's truly just physical space and making sure they're seating properly, making sure that they could see each other. If you have the capacity to do so in a physical space. You use encouraging body language and your tone of voice. Ensure the information is accessible to all. So facilitation in person on Tuesday, if you are facilitating on Wednesday, it is quite different online as well in facilitation. So online particularly, you want to allow more time for students to think, unmute, answer the question. So being comfortable with silence is a bit more difficult online as a facilitator, but you need to allow that time for students to think. You want to encourage that participation and to find that quiet space where they could be active in their discussion. Again, role model, putting your cameras on. Dean had mentioned that before. This is when you do your group norms in an online environment, it would be a good idea to consider having cameras on as maybe one of your group norms. Offer different opinions for participation. So sometimes, tech issues happen. So be open. Use your chat box. Raise hands. Unmute. Use Google Docs, Mentimeter, things like that to increase that participation. And again, ensure that the information is accessible to all, whether it's describing images or your work or you're reading the chat, etc. So very different although you're facilitating both Tuesday and Wednesday, it is a very different approach when you are facilitating in person versus online. Very similar to if you're teaching, it's very similar to that. It's very different for myself, when I teach in person. For me, in person is easier Then online, I just have to switch hats when I know that I'm doing something online. So I'm going to hand it over to Dean.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just going to acknowledge the chat because we had a lot of chat, but and hopefully you saw, I think the question was around what exactly can we encourage and what are the groups mandated to do, and you can see there's again some really good language around our expectations, and they really are required to be active, present, engaged. We do say that there are options for sure, because there are times. And there are moments, but again, it's the exception. What I will say again for the because the way the design is, it's going to be a lot different than sessions where you're fully online. You will have the chance to build the dynamics in person. You will have a chance to really interact. The students will really be engaged on Tuesday without having the virtual nuances. It's the Wednesday where that is more of a concern. But there's also a lot of presentations on Wednesday, so it shouldn't be as an issue that you might have in other virtual learning sessions. So if we look at the stages of group development, we will see that if you can just click, Donnie, there are changes that happen in the group. And what you probably will see a lot of groups like start off with and probably stay in a good portion of the session is the idea of forming, because they're still getting comfortable with each other. In the initial pieces, they when they really are just trying to figure out what this is all about, we will have to be a bit directing, and we just really will have to be a bit task focused to make sure students know how they're going. We do see elements of storming where there might not be open conflict, there might just be tension, there might be disagreements, there might be more dominant or quiet students. There we need to do a bit more coaching. You can see we front load the norming, because this literature has talked about that groups is not linear. Sometimes groups change, but often groups have to go through some storming before they actually come up with norms. And it's unfortunate because there's often like conflict and hurt relationships and so on. So what we're trying to do is often front load the norming, and that enhances the learning. It's also just it's such a transient group that's meeting for the first time and it's only short bit of time. We do think that they'll probably stay more into the forming stage, but I do feel like you will get two groups that really bond and get to performing, and where you can step back a little bit, just let the group go. So this is the real balance of trying to think, how active am I as a facilitator? How much do I step back? And to Kathleen's question, no, the students are just meeting for in the PAIN curriculum. I think, Donnie, we try to keep them together, but I think these are going to be new groups. Is that fair to say?
Yes, these will be new groups. Yes.
Yeah. So there might be a time they've met, but I would say they're in the forming stage. They're just getting to know each other. They might recognize a student or two, but in general, this is a new group for them. And I do think that opportunity where you will have a chance to create norms are really important, and they might take a little bit more than 10 minutes. I will say that I actually sometimes try to adjust my timing a little bit to front load that a little bit more. But most people, we averaged it. Most people take around 10 minutes, so that's why that is, and the groups will be the same. Yeah, going from Tuesday to Wednesday. So I do suggest, again, this is not an orientation to the whole activity. If you can read through the guides, that will really give you a sense of how this flavors the tasks, but you do definitely need to read the guides, because that will take you and you'll understand what exactly happened from Tuesday to Wednesday. But basically, again, just a reminder, Tuesday is in person, and then they are the same groups, but they're going online on Wednesday, where they're presenting a lot of the case presentations and their activities. And then we'll go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Donnie. We'll talk about the Ulster Managed video. So this is a simulated video. This is not actually, again, these videos are just simulated from years ago, but they actually stand the test of time. They have a lot of issues that we see commonly. So though this one is about Ulster management, you can imagine that a similar thing might come up when you actually have your Tuesday and Wednesday sessions about whose role is what. So if you just substitute ulcer with pain, you'll actually feel the flavor that this could happen in your group. And then so think about how it happened and how the group reacted and how the facilitation responded. Okay, so think about yourself in this spot, and we will have a bit of a small group discussion after that. Or actually, no, we'll have a large group discussion after that. Sorry, let's watch the video and we'll talk about it in a large group.
Thanks for the tip, yeah.
Hey everyone.
Hi, Andy. Hi.
Okay, let's get started. So your tutorial objective was to look at pressure ulcer management and how it affects Mr. Chan's goal to be able to use his wheelchair and go out to the movies with his friends. So who wants to start?
Well, my assessment with Mr. Chan this morning was very involved. He's at a high risk with a stage 2 pressure ulcer. So my preceptor and I, we not only measured the ulcer, we took a photo of it. This way we can objectively verify later that our treatment protocol is working. And I've got to say, it's really exciting for me as a nurse to see how much help I can be to Mr. Chan in achieving his goals.
Does everyone know what a stage 2 pressure ulcer means?
Well, I've heard the term. I just never really knew what it meant.
Is stage 2 really serious?
Well, Annabelle would be in a better position to answer that.
Okay, well, we use the stages to classify the different pressure ulcers, and stage 2, for example, basically means that the ulcer is fairly superficial with broken skin. I can tell you more about it later if you like.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
So anything else about pressure ulcer management?
Well, I don't see a role for speech at all.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Mr. Chan yet, but I don't see how social work can help with pressure ulcers.
Okay. Well, can we talk a little bit about your roles in general then?
Okay. Well, we help individuals and families enhance their well-being by using their own resources or those in the community. On this unit, our focus is on quality of life.
So I know Mr. Chan really values going to the movies. Since being admitted, it's the thing he misses most. He says it's really important to him, and he would like to get back to doing that.
And as we talk about it, I realize how much this ulcer is really affecting his quality of life. So I guess I have more of a role than I thought I did.
And can we talk about the SLP's role on the unit?
Okay. Speech language pathology looks at the prevention, assessment, and treatment of disorders of speech and language. My supervisor and I, we spend a lot of time doing swallowing assessments and intervention on this ward. With regards to Mr. Chan, we'll be ensuring that he has an adequate intake to help heal his wound. Also, we'd like to make a recommendation to elevate the head of the bed to help in the safety when he's eating. Is that going to be okay with the pressure ulcer?
If you elevate the head of the bed, there's a risk that you may create shearing forces, which would slow down the healing process of the ulcer.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I wouldn't have known that. Well, maybe we can talk later about that he, that he has adequate intake.
Definitely,
and managing the
let's
ulcer.
talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay, great. So let's talk about the next steps to develop a plan for Mr. Chan.
Okay, so look at the questions, everyone. We'll just have a discussion on this about what's happening, who's involved, how's group functioning. So just basically what are you seeing and feeling from that? And as you do that, consider the facilitator especially and putting ourselves in the place of that. So maybe we'll go off share screen, Donnie, and if you don't mind. And yeah, I welcome your thoughts. Anyone want to jump in? And every pros and cons to every facilitation approach. I'll say that too. There's no recipe here, but he did take a specific approach. Kathleen.
There, I was just wondering, is there a hierarchy when these students come together that one faculty is more, I don't know, prestigious? And does that come up? I'm new to all this, so I was just wondering how often that may be.
I will do my best to answer your question, Kathleen, but that is a rich question that I think when you think about what's the hidden curriculum, I'll comment on that. The formal curriculum is no, there's definitely not a hierarchy. There's definitely the faculties all sit on a council of health sciences together. No one faculty is the head or the lead. The CASH itself, our center, is really supportive of all of the faculties. That being said, the hidden curriculum, which I think is a reason it's not hidden at all, is what happens in the system seeps into the curriculum. So I think the students are aware, whether they've been in placement or not, that there is informal hierarchy. I know this can work in two different ways. This can work in the fact that some people who might be considered higher in the hierarchy, they're not like the hierarchy you would see where you'll see a student acting that way or calling upon that. You'll actually might see the opposite, where someone will assume that someone is of the higher hierarchy. And I'm going to say it's like our doctors are one example. Our medical students sometimes get really uncomfortable because the people, the group facilitation sometimes can go in a place where they are seen as the bad person in a video or something. So there is a stereotype there. But I think that's the opportunity, knowing that's out there, knowing that the system sometimes does this. I think we have a real opportunity, but formally nothing, Kathleen, definitely not. I don't think, and I think the students are actually blissfully not aware of that as they kind of go into the IPE sessions. But I think as soon as they hit placement, they're aware. So I do think it's an important question. I think it's really important that it underlies what we do.
And can you please say what they're all studying, the different areas?
So there's 11 professions. And what I'll do, Donnie, if you can put the actual link to the IPE curriculum, our core, that's a good place to read. It could be anywhere from physiotherapists to occupational therapists to social workers. They're all regulated professions. I think actually, no, there's maybe one or two that aren't, but but they all are quite linked in the fact that all 11 professions will work with each other at some point. So they're actually quite intentional. The ones that are actually attending pain are definitely linked to pain curriculum. So there's actually 8 professions. Is that right, Shelley? Who are actually part of the pain curriculum, but 11 that are part of our interprofessional curriculum at U of T as a whole.
There's 8 professions that are part of the IPC Pain Week. Yes.
Yeah. Great question. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat. Angie, sorry, maybe I'll start with Peter. Peter was saying the speed of facilitation. You know what? It's interesting, notably slower. So that is a nuance of a pros and cons. The pro is the slower pace, the open questions, the silence, the pausing invites people in. Wonderful there. It does feel awkward. I have to sometimes count to myself, hold back, Dean, don't jump in there, especially when I want to say something. So you said it's notably slower. It'll feel slower, especially as a facilitator, yet it's a moment that students will step into if you give them space. Looking through, maybe I'll just comment on Angie's point. When you see someone, I don't see a role for SLP, I don't see a role for social work, really task-oriented approach instead of holistic, absolutely. And so I think the facilitator could really broaden the discussion on that, absolutely. The facilitator probably could have also filled that gap and explained the role, but he did shift it. So he created space for that. But that could be a really deep discussion. And what you saw was a short clip. So I completely agree with you. So yeah, you need to just be aware that some people might feel that the role isn't as valued or as known. And that creates multiple, as I said, it makes it more trickier than a normal facilitation piece. Anyone want to add anything? There's great points in the chat, but I'll let you read through too. And Jeanette said there's no introduction. Yeah. And part of that was a short clip. So I think we can kind of know that in our own circles, we will actually have an opportunity to introduce ourselves and so on. But I think it is really showing some of the challenges. So I want to actually capture a point that Jackie's asking, maybe, and then maybe we'll move on because there's some really good pros and cons. So the difference, as I said, there's pros and cons. So the difference between calling out something and this could be calling out anything from the fact that, you know, that I don't think you realize how much you're valuing your profession, or saying, you know what, you've actually, you know, let's say someone highlights their profession being too strong, just almost calling them out and saying, no, there are lots of professions do that. Or even calling out someone who's quiet and saying, you know what, you haven't spoken a bit. Can I hear from Zoraida? So it's just consider the fact that what he used was the use of questions. He created space, he redirected, and he tried to direct the group if the group could figure things out for themselves. You have in your toolbox that ability to call out. You also have an ability, what I call calling in, where you're almost explicit, but you're trying to draw people in so that they can recognize. It's a little bit of a tricky maneuver though, too, because sometimes it's obvious what you're trying to do. So I would just suggest trying the use of questions at first and trying to draw other people in before you jump in. And that also might go for your experiences as a pain expert. You might be loving to give a quick lecture on the nuances of pain management teams. Yet again, I think we just try to hold that back for a moment. These are great conversations. Is there anything else? There's a lot in the chat. Zoraida or team, anything else I've missed? Because I'm trying to capture some of the great moments.
No, I think you covered a lot, and I do feel there are a few that I am reading that perhaps we still will have time at the end to kind of regroup and bring these questions up again or comments. So certainly I invite those who did do a comment and or question and it wasn't addressed right now to hold on to the idea, because I do feel that we'll have time towards the end of the session to kind of regroup and really talk about this again.
Shelley?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly make the point that we also have a lot of patient partners here with us today. So we talk a lot about the different professions facilitating, but we also have people with lived experience that are a part of this training and are definitely integrated into Pain Week. So just to bear that in mind as well.
Thanks so much, Shelley. And I think a lot of the patient facilitators actually I recognize, because they work in our curriculum, and the students really appreciate that lived experience. And so same as anything, is a temptation maybe to be able to jump in right away. And I would just encourage everyone to start off with questions and then draw more into your experiences. Through your time, you will have time for that. I will also add that I think it's valuing. So it's valuing the patient lived experience. It's valuing other professions. It's valuing the team members. So just that positivity around that is really helpful. And I do think the guide actually has some clear notes as tips around what the scopes, how the roles, whether it be different providers, the patient family. The guide's really good in giving you tips too. So look at that as well, because you can also draw from that. All right, we're going to actually build on some of these questions. I thank you so much for that great discussion. And so I mentioned some strategies around if you do see someone who dominates, and when I say dominate, they might be very eager to jump in. They might be just excited about pain. They might be also really pumped up about their profession. And so that opportunity to use questions and redirection, we will have challenges for people who don't speak. So thinking about, do you want to, again, the caution around calling out, but do you actually want to call people in and just recognize globally that, we haven't heard from all the roles, and the roles would be really valuable. I always say that the curriculum's in the room. Like, this is not the curriculum that you're reading in the guides. The curriculum is everyone sharing. So knowing that they're here for IPE, how do each of you share something? I try to bring it that way. And then, there is an opportunity to, that if there is like emotion or conflict, to just acknowledge things, invite others' input. But I would just say the important thing there is setting good norms really helps, and setting the environment that I actually think a lot of these things are taken care of if you front load it. That includes the people at different levels of experience. But I just remember that scale is how active do you have to be, that we said, are you directive? Are you coaching? Are you stepping back? And really know that there's not a prescription here. You have to feel out your group and go from there. If you go next slide, yeah, and I don't think I need to, these slides are all there for you too, we'll share, but I think you did see that in the video, just the fact that you're trying to enlighten people about their own professions and roles, and sometimes even their own, like the fact that someone saying, I'm a physio, so I'm just a physio, or I don't see physio's role in here, when really there's so much. We know that as team members, or we don't see someone else's role in that. There's opportunities to really clarify that. And knowing that there are jargon and language people will use that other people don't know, I think that's really important to be careful about that. And as you know, that great question about power and hierarchy, as I said, I don't think we enable that at all in the formal curriculum, but I also don't think we deny that there's power and hierarchy. I think we actually are a really different curriculum than a lot of others, where through their activities we actually recognize this is a reality. It's not always a problem too, where you do need sometimes power and hierarchy and structure, but we do capture the fact that it can really create risks in teamwork. Yeah, and I think all those, we can go to the next slide. I think that's all captured and things we've discussed. And so we have something that we want you to participate. It's a little simulation. So Anita D'Souza is a section that you're going to be doing. You're going to be actually, if you look at this, we're actually going to take one part of it that you're actually going to be doing, and we're going to do a bit of a mini simulation. So if you go to the next slide, this is what you will literally be doing. In day one, you will be talking about Mrs. D'Souza. You'll be talking about the patient's role in the team as a patient, the patient's part of it. You will be talking about the fact that Mrs. D'Souza, you'll learn a bit more about her case, that she had a motor vehicle accident, that she has depression issues, mood issues. There's a mental element, there's a physical element, there's a social element. She's really anxious, she's having trouble falling asleep, not socializing with friends. So there's lots there. So they have lots of information, and drawing from that, as I said, we know that their roles have value. You saw that in the chat as well. Yet you will have students hesitant about that. So what we're actually trying to do is being aware of all the things I just mentioned. And so at this point in the simulation, we've actually had our norms discussion, we've done everything, and we're going to tackle this debrief about Mrs. D'Souza. So that's a simulation context. And if we go to the next slide, what we're going to do is you're going to have roles that are related to that specific activity. The facilitator is going to ask people about, number one, is a facilitator role. It is going to ask people about a mini facilitation. So number one, we'll start this off by asking about people's roles, and that'll start off discussion. And you're putting yourself in the place of your students, debriefing about Ms. D'Souza, where you want to talk about your roles. So I would ask you to try to do your best to be in character. It's tricky if you feel like you have to adhere totally to the role, but just be playful a bit. We're only going to suggest you do this for about 10, 12 minutes. So it's going to be a 5-minute role play and then a 5-minute debrief. So it's not going to be long, but facilitator open the question, roles 2 to 6, whatever you want to do, act in your role and try to play the part of a student answering the question, and pick a role. It could be your own profession. It could be, if you don't have a profession, you just pick another one. You can have a little bit of drama, but also, be easy on the person too, but give them a sense of what might happen when you have this real mixed group. And then you will have a debrief as well. So actually, I'm gonna give you a little bit more time. So Zoraida and Donnie, I think if we go about 12 minutes, because they'll have to figure out the roles, everyone quickly pick a role, but between 1 to 5, depending on how many people are in your group. Someone must be number 1, and then just go with it. I would say just try to act out that mini simulation, and then make sure half your time is debriefing as well. what worked well, what could you have used, but try to do the simulation. Even if it's for a few minutes, you can go the whole 5 minutes if you want. So I think if we do 12 minutes, that should give us enough time. I'll check in with Rod and Donnie during, we might have to pull you back a little bit earlier, but we'll give you warnings. All right, does that make sense, everyone? Make sure you drag the roll, like grab the roll now, download it, it's in the chat, and then you can decide in your group who, just quickly decide, pick a roll and go with it. You can even do it on the fly. Donnie and Zoraida, have I missed anything before we send them off? Nope. And the description on the actual PDF is pretty good. So I know I've explained a lot, but I wanted to give you a sense. So just make sure, again, you download the roles now. And then when you go into the group, just decide who's going to be the facilitator, who are going to be the students, play with it a little bit for a few minutes, and then debrief about the strategies that could be used, knowing that the roles are very diverse. So some people are going to be acting differently, sometimes in opposite ways. All right, we'll see you back in 10 to 12 minutes. You're going to break out into your small groups now. I think it's now just us. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I went a bit long there. So I think I cut it down a bit to about, I figured if we have 11 to 12 minutes, we're just closing the show at that point. I think if we can get to like 10 minutes, would that be okay, Zoraida, like for you?
Yeah, that sounds fine, Dean, because really my portion is just like you said, I'm going to briefly go over Wednesday and their responsibility as facilitator on Wednesday, which is really listening to the presentations, using the assessment tool that's in the appendices, and then take home points. So I think that's fine.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how'd it go for you, Shelley and Donnie?
Good. Zoraida, if I can just throw in, on Wednesday, there's actually going to be 60 students. So there will be 6 presentations per
group.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So just, there was somebody asking if it would be the same teams. It will be, but it will also be probably more than, because, for example, so-and-so facilitator has team 1 in the morning and team 11 in the afternoon on Tuesday, right?
Oh, I see.
Or group 1 and group 11.
Okay.
Teams ABC. So the next day, that same facilitator will have groups 1 and 11 to listen to their presentations.
Okay.
Zoraida, do you mind capturing that? Sorry, I kind of glazed over that because I was trying to think on my feed. I don't think I explained that very well.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing.
Oh, I think we're recording this part. Do you want me to pause it?
Okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
We can edit it later if you want. But no, I think that's an important point. And sorry, I was actually knowing that people virtually to do that. Thank you for recording. So welcome back, everyone. I know it's hard virtually for a simulation. We just wanted you to play a little bit to make it a little bit more interactive and exciting. Welcome any thoughts from you. We'll hear from a few of you.
5 minutes was not enough.
Yeah.
But we did really end up having a lot of fun with it. And I want to say that for my group especially, I ended up being the facilitator, and everybody acted their roles a little bit too well. I had a really hard time. I was like, I don't know what to do.
Thank you for sharing, Kathy. And I'm glad, you know what? So role play, simulation, we even call it reenactment these days. It's hit and miss, and you clearly hit. So well done. Because a lot of times we hear, oh God, 5 minutes is too long. It stretches out. And so it was great that your group was so dynamic, but that must have been challenging. So Kathy's group, given you had probably a traumatic group, what were some of the strategies? It sounds like it was a tough one.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm gonna let one of my teammates talk because it was
sure. Or anyone else strategies. Yeah, how did it?
Kathy did. I was in Kathy's group, and I was the nitpicky one that naysayed everything. And it was so much fun to play, I'll tell you. She did ask everybody their opinion because one of the characters took over.
Which was me.
And I kept butting in and kept butting in and kept butting in. She actually said to me at one point, "Let me finish," which is really good. But Kathy did a good job of trying to pull everybody in, and especially the quiet one, because the rushing to get other things done one did come in at one point and say, "Oh, you guys shut up and just, let me go." Let me
Which
go.
I never said.
Places to go. So yeah, very good.
I think you can really understand why that importance of taking a couple minutes to establish all those norms at the beginning gives you a good tool, like a sort of an objective neutral tool to fall back on in these times, right? Yeah.
Great point, Jackie. And you know what? You just said to fall back on. I actually think most times when I do it well, I don't even need to fall back on it. It has already set the tone. So you don't have these difficult groups because of it. And let's be honest, that was a loaded group. That was not that should not be your experience the way, but at least you got a quick rapid burst of a few different
will the norms be established on Wednesday then, on Tuesday?
Yeah.
And so the Wednesday continues at the same norms?
Yeah.
Because I'm only doing Wednesday, so I'm worried about
and Monique, Wednesday, great question. And we'll talk more about Wednesday. Wednesday is less of what you're going to see. I think the Tuesday is a more interactive one. Wednesday is a lot of presentation and large group feedback. So it's a different flavor.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to the chat, I think the difficulty is balancing opportunity for people to share. And so also know that it's not just a one-time share, that maybe some people will share more in one activity, they'll come back in another, but through the whole thing, it is good to look out for someone who's completely disengaged and not really participating, or someone who keeps coming back into conversations and carries over. So hopefully some of your strategies worked. I love your point around the norms and some of the experiences we've already seen. Maybe we'll go to the presentation because we're actually going to summarize some things. But I really appreciated your patience with that. I'm going to pass to Zoraida, and then we'll just, as we wrap things up, if there's anything else people want to add, please use the chat as well to keep going.
So to kind of switch gears and address some of the questions in regards to Wednesday, as mentioned before, Wednesday is an online facilitation versus an in-person on Tuesday. So as part of a facilitator, it is about listening to the group presentations, to student group presentations. So just to kind of, and Shelley, please add clarity if I mess up this description. But on Wednesday, you will have 60 students in total in your room. So that's 6 groups, student groups. So you will be listening to 6 different presentations. Okay, so to give it in a bit of perspective, on Tuesday, if you actually are facilitating, let's say both days entirely, all of Tuesday and Wednesday, you have a group on Tuesday morning, you have a different group on Tuesday afternoon. Both groups though are separated into 3 groups, A, B, and C. So if you have both morning and afternoon on Tuesday, what you'll see on Wednesday is actually both your morning group and your afternoon group just together. Hence why it's 60 students. And again, 6 different presentations. So Donnie, if you could click to the next slide, please. So during Wednesday, as I said, the facilitation is more about listening to the students' presentations. And what will help guide you is using, it's Appendix 13, and is using this case plan management self-assessment tool, which goes through different areas that you could address perhaps after the presentation. Are the goals patient-centered? Is it a comprehensive plan? Meaning, is it uniprofessional plan, or is it truly an interprofessional plan? Are there appropriate interventions? How was their approach in the sense of a team approach? Were different needs or factors addressed? Physical needs, spiritual needs, social economical needs, etc. And anything about education for the family and patient, right? So again, just look through these different categories. Now, we don't expect it to be as thorough as, let's say, the self-assessment tool provides you, but at least it gives you a bit of a guide in regards to after the presentation is done and you're asking the group about questions, and perhaps the group's a little quiet, you can refer back to this self-assessment and bring out maybe some of the questions to help that discussion and the debrief or summary of the cases. So finally, in the sense of the debrief in general, really the take-home points that you should discuss with your students is what were their key learning points in terms of pain knowledge and the importance of collaboration. What did they value about the pain curriculum? And with an IPE lens, what did they value in learning about, from, and with each other in regards to the pain curriculum and how each different professions really do get involved with such cases? And as facilitators, and I'll close it here, and of course, welcome questions and discussion afterwards. As a facilitator, again, take-home points is to be mindful of your own verbal, nonverbal communication, address the use of jargon. And if you find yourself using jargon, or maybe that's one of your group norms, right? That someone actually say, and be comfortable in saying, oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand what that word means. Because you use your own jargon, you don't actually catch yourself sometimes using it. Being very attentive to the group process, knowing your group, and being and really emphasizing the importance of being a reflective practitioner and self-reflect as well as a facilitator, as well as if you are co-facilitating, reflect on that as well. So this is the time for any kind of questions. We had really great comments in the chat. I'm going to bring them up. But at this point, welcome questions, welcome thoughts. I know this was a lot. And I know we had said it before, the facilitator manuals, both Tuesday and Wednesday, really thorough. I would really emphasize to review both manuals prior to your session. It gives a really good description of what to expect. If you're one of those who kind of has to kind of visually see what the group might be like, etc., the manuals are really great resources. Miriam, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Would be there any sharing for these cases, care plans, when they are done on Tuesday for the people on Wednesday? The groups.
Will they be sharing?
Yes, the care plans done, or no? We only listen to them and then we facilitate ahead of time, I mean.
Oh, you don't see their case before they present it. No, the first time you actually see it or hear it is when they present it. So you won't, and you'll see, and perhaps for those who've had facilitated before, you could share your experiences. You'll see that the groups are so very different in regards to perhaps what they focus on in their case, how they present it, not only in the sense of information shared, but how they present it as a team. That's always very interesting to me, that sometimes it just so happened that there's one spokesperson and presents it. There are other groups that you could see really worked and got together prior, like on that Wednesday morning, and really said, okay, this is how it's going to sound, and you speak on your behalf, on your profession's behalf, and you could see it's extremely collaborative. So those are the kind of things to also keep an eye on and watch out for, and maybe even make comments in regards to the interprofessional lens of the case.
I just had a question. So I'm facilitating on Wednesday. So would I be able to know the groups, you know how the groups norms would already be set on Tuesday? So when I am coming in on Wednesday and having not had any experience with them on Tuesday, would I be able to view what their norms were? Will they have already picked out their leaders or who will be presenting the case? That type of information, or is that something that is decided on Wednesday itself?
Manit, I can jump in. Shelley O'Brien here. So what happens sometimes is there's somebody that's available to facilitate in person on Tuesday, the whole day, and then not available on Wednesday. So there are cases in which you will be paired with perhaps one facilitator that has facilitated all day Tuesday and is also available Wednesday. I will make sure that those link ups are made, that you have their email address, and you can have discussions with them about perhaps what they're planning. Yeah?
Sure. Okay.
Hi. In the past, I've done this years ago, and I feel like the small groups that we were facilitating were like one table of people. There was like maybe 10 or 12. I'm kind of having a hard time imagining 30 people in a group and how that works.
On Tuesday, you mean, Sarah?
Yeah, sorry, Tuesday.
So, and Shelley, please feel free to jump in. So usually it's exactly what you just said. It's 10 students per table, and then you have 3 tables. And you're kind of going back and forth. That's why sometimes having a co-facilitator, that's something that you would discuss. Oh, you know, do we go back and forth? Do we, how do we best facilitate this? But yes, it would be 3 tables of 10 students.
So 1 or 2 facilitators are facilitating 3 different groups, like 3 different, okay. Wow.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just add a strategy around that I tend to do. Because sometimes you feel like you want to tend to all 3 and you're spreading yourself thin a little bit, but especially with another facilitator, I sometimes kind of just like rotate, but then once I get a sense of the group, some groups are pretty straightforward and you kind of hover less so, and some groups require a bit more. I do feel like there's some activities where I do kind of roam around because I know the activities is straightforward, and some that I actually want to sit in and see the activity through. So it's a choice. It's just a choice point, depending on your field group. And I can't give you any suggestions around that because it depends on your groups. So once you get a feel for the group, see if you really want to, what I call roam, or you kind of want to like plant yourself and then just rotate in terms of group, or if you have enough facilitators, you stay a little bit towards one group that you get to know, which is ideally better. But with our facilitators, I think you'll be moving a lot. Does that help? I just wanted to, yeah, I think that's just like a practical strategy around.
Will the people involved wear name tags of their first name?
Yeah, so not to worry, Kathleen. So you'll be given a package that'll have the actual hard copies of the facilitator manuals in them. It'll have a sheet with my phone number, the evaluation link. It'll have name tags and Sharpies, and you'll, depending on where you're at, you'll meet either me or my compadre at Chestnut, and we're there to help. So shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
And Shelley, I'm just reading the chat. There was a question in regards to tech assistance with Zoom on Wednesday. So I assume that there will be tech support.
Yeah, Med IT is looking after all our tech, all the breakout rooms. There, all of that is taken care of. You will be in the Zoom room, and the students have been assigned based on their team and everything, the breakout rooms. So I'm anticipating no issues, but there will be somebody on the Zoom to help if needed.
Thank you.
Erica?
I'm just wondering if a revised manual will be sent out with the correct link to the case on Corcus, because the one in the original document is different than the one that was just posted, and that would avoid us needing to kind of go to two different things for this.
Yeah, I can send out an email. I'm just administratively wondering which email would be the best to do it, but you will have updated links, whether it's an updated manual or just the updated links for you. Those will definitely go out. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is just a link to our evaluation. If you could please fill it out and provide us some feedback from today's workshop. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy, and definitely look forward to seeing the curriculum.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your time this morning. Hope you found this helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.